Okay, hello everybody. I'm very excited to be with you folks again here. This is a very fun topic for me to talk about, and also one that I hope I have a bit of knowledge to lend to folks. I want to start off by saying that we're here to talk about listening with empathy, and I want to give full credit to the fact that I have borrowed quite heavily from a presentation my colleague has made called Sit in My Puddle, The Art of Empathy and Holding Space. So that's a training that she and I deliver together, but it is most definitely mostly her brain. So I want to give her full credit for making me a scaffold to build this presentation for you folks today. So we're here to talk about listening with empathy and how we can put that into motion to be better listeners for people we care about. So once again, just a little bit about me. My name is Meg Grudeski. I am a registered provisional psychologist who's based in Whitehorse, Yukon. I have recently swapped around offices, so I'm now working out of Ignite Counseling. And I'm really excited to participate in these webinars again, after a bit of a sabbatical, finishing my licensing. I'm excited because I think that there's a lot of value in having opportunity to learn new skills, see new skills in motion, and also to be able to ask questions and to have that dialogue. So I'm excited to be able to share some of the things I'm really passionate about with you folks today. So just to kind of run through what we're going to talk about today, we're going to go through how we usually help other people. What is our kind of typical listening style? Why we tend to focus on that particular flavor of listening, and why sometimes it isn't always the best way. I want to introduce Erin's concept that she refers to as the puddle. Pardon me. We're going to do a bit of exploring what actually is empathy and how do we highlight that or know that we're giving that to other people. Want us to talk about how we hold space for others and why those strategies are effective. So some tips and tricks on the ones that work best. Want to talk about potential challenges for listening with empathy. And I want us to consider ourselves throughout the entirety of this process. So oftentimes in caregiving roles, we forget that we're also a people that needs to be taken care of. And sometimes we overemphasize that person who we're caring for, their role or our responsibility to them. And we forget that sometimes we require that like check in with ourselves about how we're doing or the particular flavor of care that we're offering people. So that's our outline for this conversation. Okay. We want to start off with by just saying that there are different flavors of helping and that there are different intensities or deliveries of how we help people. This is kind of a new concept that I've been playing around with about like sometimes we just have like different flavor desires. Sometimes we need something that's like comforting and something that is what we're familiar with. And sometimes we're willing to try, something new. We're willing to try a different delivery of care. And sometimes we might be needing something that's like really spicy and really potent, because maybe the things that we're dealing with require a little bit of like novelty and challenge and a little bit more directness. So I want to just kind of highlight that we come into situations with different flavors of how we help people, and we are often responding to what that person is giving to us. So you may notice that you kind of tailor your particular flavor of helping to the person that you're gifting that help to. And so we're already doing this. We do this kind of innately as humans, but just as another opportunity to say, we can be specific about that, and we can ask people if they're wanting their comfort in their very familiar way, or if maybe they're willing to try receiving care from us in a different way. We might want to be expanding our little recipe book of help. So being able to be specific with people about how we can deliver care and assistance and help, and also being kind of mindful inside of ourselves that, different things might require different recipes from us. So when we think about how we normally help a person, if you have a friend who calls you after a particularly stressful day or week, or you're in a situation where you know this person has got a lot of stressors going on for them, and we want to offer assistance, we're people who care about other people, we typically tend to start with solutions. We want to be able to give them a bunch of information or a bunch of options about how to resolve what we perceive as their problem. So often it's about solutions. Often it's about providing advice. We typically want to share how we would or how we have handled similar situations. We want to give people the knowledge we wish we might have had in those moments. We might share what friends of friends or other people we know who've navigated similar situations did. Again, we want to give people the quick route. We want to give them options to resolve the stressors. We also sometimes might excuse ourselves from the conversation because we might not feel confident in our ability to help. So sometimes when people come to us with issues, we might just be like, oh gosh, there's a lot of things going on and I'm not able to do that today, because we might not feel comfortable sitting in that, bit of insecurity of how we might deliver assistance. And as Erin would tell you in her trainings and in her practice, the, quote unquote, I know exactly how you feel, and then you start sharing your own personal story with them is probably her number one kind of like faux pas or pet peeve, because it feels disingenuous. Nobody knows exactly what we're going on. There's no way that people can know for sure exactly my feelings. And it is kind of a bit of a like invalidation. So this is usually how we help, though. And again, they're done with the best of intentions. We're trying to be connected to other humans. We want to give people care. It's just that they don't always land in the way that might make the most sense. So I do all of these things. Everybody does all of these things. There's no fault in having this be your sort of first response. But maybe it's an opportunity for us to just reflect on, oh, I don't really know if that one lands. I'm not sure if that's the best one. So why do we help in those particular ways? Well, again, we want to be helpful. We want to feel useful. We don't want to see people we care about struggling. We want to be able to give them relief from whatever painful, uncomfortable situation that they're experiencing is. Maybe we really have been through a similar situation and we're eager to share the things that we've learned because perhaps we're quite proud of the progress that we've made, or maybe we did learn a really cool new skill and we want to pass that along. So there is a genuine enthusiasm that might come through. We often think that we know what the person is feeling and we feel like we have advice to offer or support to give them. So often we go in with the assumptions, and this is again a normal human thing to do, but sometimes we don't always get those right. And sometimes we want to be able to show that person we care so much we anticipate or predicting what's going on for them. And that's again from a genuine place. And also brains like having closure to things. We want to be able to know that this person was in a stressful situation, they reached out, or we noticed that they needed care and we delivered that, and everything feels lovely and wrapped up because there's an end point for us. So it's a fairly natural human set of interactions that lead us to respond in ways that we typically do. I'm gonna just scooch out to show us a fun video, and I'm hoping that my technology works and it all comes together. Oh goodness, where did all of there we go. So this video is called It's About the Nail, and I have the links in the slide. But it's kind of a fun video that highlights how much we try to impose upon other people our flavor of assistance.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
Yeah, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See,
out.
you're not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just... Sometimes it's like there's this achy... I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
Yeah, that sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. Ow. If you would just...
Don't...
So the synopsis of the video is that she, has a physical nail stuck in her head. And the idea is that we want to make sure that we're offering the solutions, but sometimes we don't deliver them the way that that person might want them. And as we saw and witnessed in the video, she was like, you're not even listening about the way I want you to listen to me. So being able to kind of be there with that person. It's also just like a fun, cute clip that makes me giggle because that's often how conversations might unfold. So, in the video, he's offering solutions and we want to be able to give like resolution to the problem. And so why would we let people struggle with what's going on for them? It does seem counterintuitive or counterproductive to let people kind of be in that space that's hard for them. It's also difficult for us to watch people struggle or to witness people having kind of that inner conflict or that conflict with what's going on. It feels uncomfortable. And the kind of baseline of it all is that brains are problem-solving machines. So we don't want to see people in a problem. We want to be able to move people into solutions. So we don't often let people struggle with what's going on because we are kind of hardwired. And also because we're socially caring humans, we don't want that to be what their experience is. So highlighting that sometimes that particular flavor of help isn't effective. There are a few reasons why that's true. So the first one I want to talk about is like, it's not always effective to like immediately solution or problem solve because people need time to process what's going on for them. Being able to vent or offload, get things off of their chest, get things out of their heads. There's actually like an activation of our brain that happens when we try to articulate what's going on for us. So 4 different parts of your brain have to coordinate for you to like verbally discuss what's going on, which allows your brain to talk to itself in a new way. And it activates different areas that might have different portions of solution. So being able to let people have an opportunity to actually talk out what's going on for them helps their brain process what's happening. The other point I want to highlight is like people often already know what they need to do. They probably already know the like course of action, the series of steps, the stuff that's going on that will help them resolve their problem. And that they're actually really looking for connection. They're looking for validation and reassurance and understanding that what they're dealing with is a difficult struggle or is a conflict or a challenge for them. I think we can all relate to the fact that like when we're faced with a problem, 99% of the time we have ideas of solutions. We don't need people to give us brand new, like completely novel solutions. We've got what's going on. What we want is people's support. We want acknowledgement. We want an opportunity to talk through what we think is the best solution and to get reassurance that we make good choices for ourselves. People might feel dismissed or misunderstood if we're not spending time listening to what's going on for them. If every time you brought a problem forward and people just dumped a bunch of solutions on you and then never actually helped you navigate through those things, you might not pick them as your problem-solving person going forward, because it feels really kind of directive, or it feels really like dismissive, that I have stuff that I wanted to trust you with, but didn't take the time for me. Okay, we might also be making assumptions about how they're feeling or what the event or circumstance meant for them. And we might be wrong about what that is. Oh, sorry, my audio is still going. Okay, there's just a thing that flashed up. Technology is fine. So we might be making assumptions about how they're feeling or what that circumstance meant for them. And more often than not, we're not always correct about that. So we apply our own perspective and experience to other people's perspective and experience, and sometimes those things don't match up. So maybe our help is ineffective because it's apples to oranges, and we're not actually talking about the same kind of issues. And this is, again, where I want to kind of highlight that, like, maybe it's the wrong dish for their flavor. Maybe their palate, their taste isn't ready for what we want to offer. So we might find a particular style of care comforting, and that might not be something that they're interested in receiving. And that is a piece that makes our help feel ineffective. And it's frustrating for both sides of this equation, for them as the person we care about and for us as the caregiver. If that doesn't connect and those things don't align, it's frustrating for everybody involved. So what do we do? How do we actually help people in ways that feel good for everybody? And this is where I'm going to quote directly my colleague. It's time to sit in the puddle. This is the opportunity to kind of get into that space with that person and to feel like we're connected to them in this, somewhat difficult, icky space. So that's exactly how she phrases this. The puddle is, and you can think of this very literally, the puddle is mucky and it's murky and it has a lot of things that feel uncomfortable. It is kind of wet. It feels cold and unknown and unpleasant. And oftentimes it's overwhelming to see people in that puddle because that's not always a fun space to hang out. And not very many people are like, let's go hang out in this like particularly icky cold space. So if you can think of emotional puddles like physical puddles, that might help us feel more connected to this flavor of analogy. And just like with the physical puddle that we're experiencing, like I think we can all relate to like when you have like damp, wet clothes because you've accidentally got splashed or you were out in the rain or whatever, that's uncomfortable. And that's kind of the emotional equivalent that some of us experience when we don't know how to help people or when our flavor of help isn't landing for that person. It feels icky and uncomfortable. Okay, I'm going to get another video to play. Hopefully, technology is working for me. This is a video by Brené Brown. So she's a very well-known educational psychologist. I think maybe she's a social worker, don't quote me. But it highlights, and it also has a fun animation about empathy. And so I'm going to play it for us.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, and climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no. You want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with "at least." Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, "I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me." Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
It's one of Erin's favorite clips to share, and I think it does a very succinct job of showing us that, again, it shows us again that like the most effective way to respond to people is not to always just bombard with solutions or try to point out like the silver lining. It's about being able to sit with that person and allow them to feel that genuine human connection. And there's tons of very cool research about just having other people present allows us to endure and sustain difficult hardships in a way that we can't if we don't have human companionship. So what is empathy and how do we highlight this? And I'm just going to review some of the things from the film. So perspective taking. So being able to know what it's like or what it might be like for that other person and being able to acknowledge that their experience is their truth. It's really easy for us to say, well, like, I know what that situation's like, and here's what I did, and here's what my experience was, so that should be yours. We have to be able to allow people to be the experts in their own life and to allow us to know that what's going on for them is their very real experience. We want to stay out of judgment. So like they talked about, any of the like, I know that you should do this. I think that you should blank. Have you tried this particular thing? Being able to stay out of the judgment where we're offering, well, how come you didn't fix it this way? Or how could you let it get this particular way? It's hard for us to do because, again, we put our particular perspective on those things. We want to recognize emotions in other people. And more importantly for me, communicate what we're noticing is going on for them. So it is important to recognize like that person feels sad or disappointed, or that person feels overwhelmed, and then be able to communicate what we're seeing for them. Hey, I noticed that you're feeling, it looks like you're feeling really uncertain about what's going on. Is that true? How can we talk about that? Empathy is not action oriented in the way that we expect us to solve problems. Empathy is action oriented in that like we're going to engage in this process with that person, but not that we have a checklist of how we'll resolve it. And for me, I want to highlight most importantly that empathy is really a vulnerability risk, because as the film sort of highlighted, we have to find a place in ourselves that has similar feeling in order to be able to connect with that person on their level about that particular emotion. Maybe the situation around it or the experience around it isn't the same, but we might have that same sentiment, that same feeling. And that's a vulnerable place to be, because we have to go into ourselves to find that. And then we have to allow that person to see that from us. And that's always a little bit difficult and feels a little bit uncomfortable. So these are kind of the things that I identify as empathy, and everyone might have a slightly different recipe for what that is for them. So when we talk about how do we sit in the puddle, how do we actually engage with that person so that we're listening with empathy and that we're we're in that space with them, I always want to be able to ask to seek consent that I can be there with them. Hey, I noticed that this feels overwhelming and you could maybe use somebody to hang out with. Is it okay if I be that person? Again, because sometimes people might know what's best for them and maybe they need to have a bit of space and go for a walk first, or maybe they need to like go have their first response processing moment. Some of us do that in many different ways. And they might not want us right then, but they may want us later. So I always want to ask, is it okay that I'm here with you? Using open-ended questions, again, allows us to be very clear about wanting their perspective. It eliminates us imposing our judgment, our feeling, our perspective onto them. Really just getting information from them. The idea of using active listening skills, and I'm sure we all know what different ones of these look like, but for me, my favorite active listening skill is to approach things with curiosity. I genuinely want to know what goes on for people or how that impacts people or what they might be thinking or feeling or experiencing. And it allows me to have a lot of leeway with direct questions or personal questions because it's curiosity based. I genuinely want to know. The use of silence, I think, is a huge piece for listening with empathy and for like Erin's flavor of puddle sitting, because sometimes we just need to be present with other people and we don't need to overwhelm them with stories or ideas or questions. We might just need to sit with them and let them have their process moment. Using our body language, how do we show people that we're listening? And all of us might have different styles of how we do that, but being able to just let people know with your words, but also with your presence, that you're there, that you're interested and you're intrigued, that you want to listen to what's going on. I want to highlight that we need to try to remember that it's about the person in the situation and it's not about us. Even though we are two people having this interaction, that we want the like priority to be from their perspective. It's very easy for us to see people in a difficult situation and immediately want to jump in and commiserate, and then suddenly we take it over and it's about our shitty situation. We want to be able to remember, like, this is a thing that I noticed. I came to this conversation because I saw, and I want to be able to keep that person as the priority for those discussions. We might want to inquire about what they need, but being able to be very prepared that they might not know what that is yet. But sometimes we might be able to offer things that are comforting. Do they need a cup of tea? Do they want to go for a walk? Moving out of the environment, moving our body is a huge piece of helping us process. They might not know what they need, and we might need to be able to sit in that uncertainty with them. So getting into the person's puddle with them is a big uncomfortable task, but sometimes it's the fastest way to move out of or through some of that incredibly difficult stuff they're experiencing. This is one of my very favorite comics in the whole world. It is these two little blob creatures, and one of them is asking, "Are you okay?" The other one says, "Not really." The first one asks, "Do you want to talk about it?" The second one says, "Not really." And then the first, character just sits down beside the character that's having not a good time. And you can see that that second character feels connected and relieved and a little bit happier, because that's maybe just what they needed. They didn't want to talk about it, but they wanted that person's presence or that other presence. And that, I think, to me is one of the like highlight things that we can do. And we can learn a lot from pets because they don't speak to us, but we receive a lot of comfort from them simply by their presence. Okay, I want to just highlight why the puddle works. And this is kind of the fun, exciting bit of it, is you're like, why does it work to just sit around and let people have their feelings? Well, it works because we feel connected. We feel validated that we're experiencing some difficult stuff. I often joke that in my clinical practice, one of my sort of most used phrases is like, that's a lot of shit. Because sometimes when people are explaining what's going on for them, they need to be validated that like, that is a lot of stressful things all at once together. And it is truly one of my like key highlight connective phrases is just acknowledging that, like, yeah, what you're experiencing is a lot. The things you describe are intense. And being able to feel validated that we're having those feelings is huge for humans. It makes us feel important. It makes us feel heard. And it makes us feel like we're connected because those are the highlights. Those are the forefront of it. Being present, it's really hard to be future planning or dealing with all of the past, like, ruminations when we're just in the moment with each other and we're just present and we're just connected. It allows us opportunity to process out loud. Again, I talked about those brain activations. Sometimes just being able to chat it out creates solutions inside of ourselves because now our brain's talking to itself more effectively. And also being in the puddle with somebody else allows people to have their own timeline, and they feel empowered and more in control of things because they get to be the driver of how that looks. They get to pick when we exit those conversations. We talked about this earlier in my office today, actually, about how there are sometimes people who are very action oriented and they want to solve problems. So we had the analogy of, like, someone is sitting in their puddle, this person comes in and sort of just like grabs them and reefs them out to the shoreline and says, "You're welcome." That might not have been the thing that they needed in that moment. And it's a bit kind of discombobulating. It's a bit, you get a little bit kind of disoriented when people impose their timelines or their solutions on you. So allowing that person to be in charge of it is another reason why the puddle works, because we're letting them have control and they feel empowered. Okay, last fun clip, and it is from one of the greatest films of all time describing mental health and connection. It's from the film Inside Out, and it is about the very delightful imaginary character. So I'm just going to play this and then we can talk about why sitting and listening with empathy is important.
The stuffed animal Hall of Fame! My rocket! Wait, Riley and I were still using that rocket. It still has some song power left. Who is your friend who likes to play? No, you can't take my rocket to the top. Riley and I are going to the moon. Riley can't be done with me.
Hey, it's gonna be okay. We can fix this. We just need to get back to headquarters. Which way to the train station?
I had a whole trip planned for us.
Hey, who's ticklish, huh? Here comes the tickle monster. Hey, Bing Bong, look at this. Oh, here's a fun game. You point to the train station and we all go there. Won't that be fun? Come on, let's go to the train station.
I'm sorry they took your rocket. They took something that you loved. It's gone. Forever.
Sadness. Don't make him feel worse.
Sorry.
It's all I had left of Riley.
I bet you and Riley had great adventures.
Oh, they were wonderful. Once we flew back in time. We had breakfast twice that day.
Sadness.
It sounds amazing. I bet Riley liked it.
Oh, she did. We were best friends.
Yeah, it's sad.
I'm okay now. Come on. The train station is this way.
How did you do that?
I don't know. He was sad, so I listened to what...
Hey! There's the train!
If you've never seen the movie Inside Out, please go and watch it. It's one of my ultimate favorite films. It's just so danged adorable. But in the film, we have the character of joy and we have the character of sadness, and they have very different strategies about how they're helping Bing Bong with his emotions. And I think for me, it highlights the fact that, Joy was trying to impose her solutions and her, like, let's just get it done. And we have this task. And Sadness was really able to just let Bing Bong have his moment and was able to be present with him in those very big, important, sad emotions that he was experiencing. So they make it look easy, and it can be, but there are also some challenges with sitting with empathy and being in someone's puddle. So it's uncomfortable to be in silence. It's a skill that takes time to practice, one I still am working on. But being able to just allow that space and letting that person know that we're here for them, even though we don't have to be talking about it, is an important thing. And sometimes silence is a really powerful tool to allow people to feel all the way through their emotions, because we might interrupt them and we may move them through faster than they want to because we're trying to fill that space. One of the challenges about being worried about saying the wrong thing, and I think this is a piece that we hear very frequently in our trainings, is like, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to upset people. I don't want to distract people or whatever. And I want to highlight that when people feel a genuine connection, when we are coming with curiosity and we want people to feel like we care, they know that we have this like heart-to-heart connection that we can experience, that we know what people's intentions and motives are. And even if they might say not exactly the right thing, we often know it's coming from a place where they're trying. And you can recover from what might feel like a misstep or a mistake. As somebody who is infamous for putting my foot in my mouth, I can attest that you can recover from those things quite quickly and easily just by owning that it wasn't the right thing and asking people what they would have preferred instead, or acknowledging that, like, I'm here and I care and I got it wrong right now, but I still want to be here and I want to get it right. Sometimes we have the challenge of being too close to people, in that we often have a bigger desire to fix things for people who are in our inner circle. And I'm sure my partner would attest to this very, very adamantly, that I'm not always the best person for their particular flavors of stuff because I'm too close. I know too much of the background information. I know too much about them. I'm too invested in things going smoothly that I might not always be the best person to sit with them, because I'm just too close to it. It's also kind of my puddle, and that makes it more invested. I'm more invested in an outcome. So sometimes we might be too close to the situation or the person to be able to be effective. And also sometimes the challenge of keeping ourselves calm and regulated and not being overwhelmed by it. It can be a lot to hear what's going on for people if they truly risk their vulnerability and let us in. Sometimes we're like, whoa, that is way more than I thought was going to happen. And we have to be able to navigate that, like, our emotional response is valid and important, but also how that might impact their emotional response. There's actually lots of opportunity to have connection through those things, because again, we might get activated in a way that we didn't anticipate because of how much we're invested or care about this person. So those are some of the challenges with sitting in puddles, is they are difficult spaces to be. I also want to just say that, like, we also need to spend a bit of time connecting with our own needs in those puddle sitting moments too, because we want to be able to be good representations of caregiving. And I'm sure none of us want to put ourselves in situations where we don't feel like we can give people the best version that we can give them. So advices that I have, I know I'm not supposed to, but I do. I want you to be aware of what's going on for you in that moment. Sometimes you might not have the time, sometimes you might not have the mental or emotional capacity, and sometimes it might be just too close to home. And all of those are fairly valid reasons to say, like, I care about you and I want someone to be a part of this experience with you, but maybe it can't be me. That's okay. Is there someone else to connect that person with? And ideally, someone that they feel comfortable with. Again, we don't want to offer solutions. Oh my gosh, my friend Erin is the best at this experience. You should go and listen and have her listen to you and have her take care of you. Might not always land, because that might not be the person that individuals find comforting. I find Erin very comforting, but other people might not, because they don't have that connection. So who can we link them to? That person will probably know a much better suggestion than we do. And how can we support them to get connected? What does that person need to know about our limits? You know, hi, I have the next 2 hours free. I'm able to talk about XYZ things, but at some point I'm going to have to go do this other thing. We can make a plan when we get there, but giving people information about what we're able to deliver or not deliver is important. And being able to ask for a timeout if we need them, because sometimes, again, we might hear too many things. We might get into a space where we just did not anticipate the conversation, and we might need to have a moment to regroup. This is really hard for you. I'm wondering if we can take a timeout to go get a tea or have a walk, and we can readdress this in a minute. That highlights for that other person that we're genuinely interested, and also that we're being impacted by what's going on for them. It's a way to validate their experience as much as we are our own experience. What happens if you get puddle soaked? You're just saturated with the puddle. And this, I think, is another piece we don't often talk about in caregiving, because we anticipate that, like, once you start it, you can't stop the caregiving until the thing is resolved. But I want to highlight that you can. If you get puddle soaked, you're saturated with that moment, that person, that topic. You can remind them of your limits. Remember when I said that I had to be somewhere in 2 hours? I just want you to know we're coming up on that time. So let's figure it out together, right? We're not just going to, like, leave that person, but we are holding our limitations. Connect them with somebody that is able to or can be helpful for them, that they would find comforting. We might be able to gently offer suggestions if we're permitted. And what I mean by this is, in some relationships, we might have agreements previously established with people from other times we've helped them, of like, okay, you've ranted for 25 minutes and now I'm going to offer you an opportunity to take a breath and eat a sandwich or go for a walk. Gently offering those suggestions of things that have worked for them in the past is a very effective way to help that person start to move through things. I will say to people that know me very well, like, at about the 20-minute mark of me ranting about things, and I'm a verbal processor, so I might do this more than other people do. Like, I need to be reminded to go for a walk or stand up or, you know, spin in a circle or move my body in some way that interrupts the momentum that my brain's been building. And those are suggestions that I take with kindness, and I take them genuinely appreciatively, because that's an established pattern that I have. If a new person was like, oh, you just have to go do XYZ, I would be like, you don't know me well enough to know that yet. And I might be skeptical. We may enlist other supports. We might want to share the load about what's going on. Again, being able to have connection, multiple connection points too, also allows us to feel more interconnected with those people that we care about, who we want to receive care from. And to just keep checking in with yourself during the process, because you don't have to continually sit in a puddle, and you're allowed to get out if you need to also. There is nothing to say that once you start the puddle sit conversation with someone that you can't at any point give yourself permission to exit, and you would find another way to connect and support that person. But sometimes we just, like, we get into a puddle and we realize it's full of things we didn't anticipate. And maybe it's deeper than we are used to swimming or navigating in, and we might need to take care of ourselves so we can be there in the future. Those, again, I think, are permissions we forget to give ourselves as caregivers in those situations. So how do you support yourself? Those are excellent questions that are forever an ongoing thing. And I think we are especially having self-care conversations in ways we never did before. So identifying where and who you receive support from, and how do you release stress and energy after you've supported someone? as a person who does this in their job, I have a like between appointments ritual of being able to kind of try to shake off and reset. And part of it is going for a walk, part of it is moving my body physically, part of it might be having a quick discussion with a colleague that I know I can receive like comfort and support from. Maybe it is eating sour candies. There's lots of fun research about sour candies resetting brain emotional loops. You can figure out how you feel, how you reset, and how you fill your tank up so that you're available to support other people. And I also want to highlight that we should be celebrating the success that we have as caregivers. We want to be celebrating the effort that we put into it, the effort that we noticed what was going on and that we sought that person out. And I think we should be celebrating our vulnerability. I don't think humans give themselves nearly enough credit about the effort and the risk and the like emotional bandwidth that it takes to be vulnerable with other humans. We forget that that's actually something that needs to be celebrated, because not everybody goes there with people and not everybody is open to being that connected. So please, whilst you're also maintaining your physical and emotional boundaries, don't forget to celebrate that you just did a very cool thing supporting another human. This is the part where I thank you for listening, and then I open it to questions and comments and thoughts, and I'm so excited to do that. I also just want to put my contact information up again. So if there's any follow-up that you have or you're curious about, here's how to reach me. And again, I want to highlight and thank very graciously my colleague for allowing me to borrow many of her ideas and slides and much of this entirety. So if you'd like to give accolades or full credit, Erin at Ignite Counseling is the person who built this concept and who I think has done an excellent job trying to teach people about empathy and space and being present for other humans. So thank you so much for listening, everyone. I'm excited to field questions and to hear from you if you have them in the future. So thank you.